Let's take a little break from classes for right now and learn a few other stuff good to know in C++. So let's delete all of that garbage, and here we are. Let's learn about C++ arrays. Until now, if you wanted to make 10 integer variables, you probably went ahead and made like 1 and then 2 and 3 and 4 and 5 and like that. You made 10 separate integer variables. And sometimes making lots of variables in this manner could be annoying, especially if you have hundreds of integers, hundreds of floats, and hundreds of characters and stuff like that. So here's a shortcut of how you could make hundreds and as many variables as you'd like all in one shot. Let's say we want to make 10 integer variables. Here's how I would make an array of 10 integers. I would type int. I would type a name of my array, let's call it my array. Then I would open up a square bracket, type the number of integers I'd like, and then close the square bracket. And of course I will finish up with the semicolon. In C++, when you create a variable and you're using the square brackets, and inside over there you have a number, this will create an array of 10 different of these variables. So right now we have a list of 10 integer variables all stored in this array variable called myArray. It's like I created 10 different integer variables all in one shot. How do I start using these different variables? Very simple. myArray square brackets, and in these square brackets I will type the number of which array I want to use right now. So if I want to use some number in the middle of that array, I will type that number, and that will give me that specific variable that's in that list. And then I could do whatever I'd like with it. I could give that integer 8, and then I could do the same for a different one of those integers in the list. Though here is something very important to realize. When you create an array of variables, you will type right over here the real true amount of variables you would like this array to have. But when you start using that array, and you will want to use, for example, the first or the second or the third of that list, you will not use the real number of that particular variable. For example, if I want to use the first variable, I'm not going to type myArray 1. That will not give me the first variable of the list. When I start using my array, I have to go one less number than what I really want. So the first variable is myArray 0. The second variable is myArray 1. The 10th variable is myArray 9. So even though in the creation of this array I said that I want to have 10 variables in this array, but myArray 10 will be a bug in your program because myArray 10 doesn't exist. What really exists is everything between myArray 0 and myArray 9. This is known as offset 0, which means that you start counting up from the actual number 0. So when you type this one line over here, int myArray 10 inside of square brackets, square brackets, it's as if you would have manually created 10 variables which are named like this: myArray 0 in square brackets, myArray 1 in square brackets, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, and 9. And each one of these variables behave exactly like a regular integer variable. So you can of course assign some number for it to hold. You can make it increase its value by 1. You can print out the variable to the screen using the cout functionality. And the advantage that we have over here is that instead of creating 100 different integer variables, each having its own name like x, x1, x2, x3, or whatever you want to give it, f, and whatever name you're going to give your variables, you can in one simple line create 100 or even 1,000 of integer variables, as many as you'd like, and each of those variables' specific name is, like I showed before, that array's name, two square brackets, and any number between 0 and the number that you typed, one below the number that you typed when you created it, because everything is offset 0 from the time of creation forward. Let's try it out. Right over here I'm creating an array called myArray. Of course, this can be any valid variable name like X or Z or anything like that. And we are going to make 1000 integers inside of this array, and we're going to assign 1 to the very first of this list, which is again the number 0 of the list of the array, and we are going to give 800 to the second variable of this list, which is of course with the number 1. And to make sure that it works, we're going to print that out on the screen to make sure that myArray0 has whatever we gave to it right over here, and myArray1 has whatever that is supposed to have. Let's see that in action. And here we go. myArray0 has 1 and myArray1 has 800. Everything worked perfectly. The very unfortunate thing about using the C++ array is that you can very easily make an unnoticeable runtime bug by accidentally trying to access one of the variables, or one of this array's variables, which doesn't exist. Like, for example, if I logically thought that my array has a number 1000, which logically should make sense because I made an array with 1000 variables in it, it makes sense that it should have a myArray number 1000. What we forgot is that everything is offset 0, so the most that this list has, the most variables that this array has, is 999 really, because that in truth is the number 1000 if we start counting from the number 0. The unfortunate thing is that any time we go out of bounds and we try to go into a variable that this array really doesn't have, such as in this case the number 1000, or if I go even further than that, 1001, 1002, or even 2000, or whatever we're going to make accidentally, the compiler will see no problem at all with that. Everything will look like a valid C++ code, so you will not get any compiler errors whatsoever, because the compiler won't pay attention exactly how many variables myArray is supposed to have, so that every time we go inside, we try to access the variables of myArray, the compiler should make sure that we do the right number. The compiler will not pay attention to that. It's only during runtime of your program where your program will try to access a piece of memory which doesn't belong to myArray. At that point, your program will have undefined behavior and hopefully will just crash right there and stop the program, and if you're not lucky, it might crash your operating system and you might have to restart your computer or something. We are going to learn better ways of creating thousands of variables all together in one shot without the need of using this very dangerous C++ array. But whenever you do use it for whatever reason, make sure your program will always try to access it with the correct boundaries, starting by 0 and ending by 1 less than whatever this array has. Because if you go out of these boundaries, like if you for some reason accidentally go below 0, 1 or 2 or 9 or whatever, or if you go too much above the limit of variables that this array contains, your program is doomed. Here's an old way of how we used to make arrays of text, like for example an array of, which I would call my name, which would be of course an array of characters, so that I can have a variable like this which will contain a string of text like my name, anti-RTFM on YouTube. We used to need to finish it off with this special escape character called the null character, so that when we'd want to print this string of text to the screen, we would know when the text is finished, so that we won't accidentally go out of the boundaries of how many characters there are in this array. But it's still definitely not the best way of doing this, as we'll see in the next video with the standard library string.